Happy Devils Tuesday. This is At the Point, episode 21. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Bruce Zeman, streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, X Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios inside the bunker in an undisclosed location, beautiful New Jersey, and somewhere on the beautiful beaches of Delaware. But let me tell you, Bruce, I'd rather be at American Whiskey right now. I really would, because the Devils are going to play the BJs, the Blue Jackets, tonight, and I'd rather be there right now.
Well, I don't blame you, and that's a big game for both teams tonight. Both teams need points, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And Max says in the YouTube Live, being this bright at 5 p.m. is so weird. This daylight savings is driving me nuts. Why don't you just come to a compromise, split it down the middle, and leave it?
I don't know. It seems like in this nation right now, Sam, there's just so many things that people want to debate about. Like, I'm surprised we can get people to agree that it's light out.
Yeah, I know. You know what? I know. But I would love to just split it down the middle. Just take a half an hour off. Get a half an hour back. And just leave it. Leave it year-round. But that's just me. I'd rather go with simplicity. But speaking of which, that trade deadline, we're past that right now. It's been less than a week. There's some winners and losers. And we've got our favorites. And we've got our favorites, even the losers. But which teams got better after trade deadline?
Well, it was a crazy trade deadline, Sam. There were so many rumors about so many players going to so many different places. Some of them happened. Some of them didn't. There are teams that got significantly better. There are teams that got worse. And there are some teams that just didn't do anything, and they're taking heat for it. But I think if you had to pick the team that got the best or got better, had the best outcome with the trade deadline, it's got to be the Dallas Stars, picking up Mikko Rantanen, one of the best players in the NHL. Got him from Carolina, and I think this is going to be a move that'll finally get Dallas over the hump in the Western Conference. Big trade for GM Jim Nill, getting Rantanen, and a huge impact for his team.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest stories during trade deadlines was Rantanen, because he was moved from Colorado to Carolina. We've said this many times that he was just caught off guard. And then Carolina was like, all right, you're not in it here. We're going to flip you. Who would have thought, it's rare. It does happen, but it's rare that you get flipped to two teams when it's all said and done for one deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if we're trying to get to the bottom of what actually happened, and again, we're analysts, we're looking at it. We've both got our sources. You've talked to people, I've talked to people, but the one thing that surprises me a little bit about this is that Carolina didn't do their homework, or it's been reported that they didn't do their homework, because apparently Rantanen never had any intention of signing there. He told them that. It's been reported in a couple of places, and I actually confirmed this with a couple of people that I talked to, that he made it pretty clear that he wasn't going to sign there. I'm just not sure why you would trade for a player, unless you're going all in to try to win the Stanley Cup this year, and maybe that was Carolina's thinking. But if you do the math, basically they wound up getting 4 draft picks for Rantanen, and really, I mean, the only way you can look at this is that's a pretty big failure in having to do this. I mean, it just, and here's the thing: you want to talk about failure part 2. Rantanen had said that he was caught completely off guard in this trade. He wasn't expecting it. He was really kind of shocked. And at first, I think he did and said all the right things. He said that, I'm not saying I'm not going to sign here, but I'm just trying to process this because I didn't know this was going to happen. I don't think that makes Colorado look very good if that's the case. Again, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. But here's the thing. You're going to have one motivated player because now Colorado and Dallas are in the same division. And if you don't think that Rantanen is going to shove that right up their backside when they play, I got to tell you, there's going to be some fireworks if they meet in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, two heavyweights going at it, one with a real big chip on his shoulder. It could be a big price to pay if you're Colorado.
Well, and the way it looks, too, because one of the things, Sam, that teams are doing, there's the 30 teams, and if you're looking at getting free agents to want to come and play for your team, let's talk away from the deadline for a second, all right? If you have a player of Rantanen's caliber, one of the best players in the world, and we've talked about this before, he's gone out there and he said, I was willing to take less to stay here in Colorado, and I had no idea that this was going to happen. How does that make the team look to other free agents? I mean, I don't think that makes them look too good.
No.
And like you said, he is going to be absolutely motivated. And I mean, if you're, the Colorado leadership, what happens if you play Dallas, I don't know if they can play together in the first round. They probably can. I don't have that in front of me, but let's just say first or second round. Let's say it's a 5 or 6 game series. How are you going to explain that to your fan base if Rantanen goes out and has 11 points in 6 games and just absolutely lights you up?
At the same time, who's running Colorado?
Well, again, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't, and we don't, even as analysts, even though we both talk to people. But it's just, if you're talking about, folks may have heard the phrase that perception is reality, right? To me, and you, I mean, we've both been in the media a while. Like, it's not a good look for Colorado. Doing that to one of the top talents in the league, I don't think it makes them look good. And now he's not only in a conference rival, he's on a division rival, and he's motivated. So that just could end very badly. And my second point, in another team that some people have as a winner, some people has as a loser, are the Boston Bruins. Trading Brad Marchand to the Florida Panthers, a last-minute deadline deal. And if you've been following this, and I know you have, Sam, there's been reports that Boston came in with a very low offer, and Marchand actually took it on himself to call the team and say, hey, let's get this done. I want to finish my career here. And then not long after that, he's dealt to the Florida Panthers, who granted are, Stanley Cup champion, Stanley Cup contender. But again, if you're Don Sweeney, who I'm going to be honest, I'm going to tell you what my opinion is. I mean, I think he's made some questionable decisions with that team. They don't have a great track record for doing things. Jim Montgomery, firing him. You've got the Marchand thing. You've got the Mitch Miller signing, which we've talked about in the summer on this league. They haven't done anything since 2011. And in talking to some of my people and probably some of our listeners, I'll tell you right now, the Boston fan base is not pleased with this trade. And again, if you're Don Sweeney, you're going to stand in front of that microphone. And listen, this is what GMs do. They get paid big money to make decisions like this. Okay, but what are you going to say to your fan base? Because Florida and Boston, will probably cross paths if the Bruins make the playoffs and everything. What are you going to say to your fan base if Marchand lights you up in the playoffs? What are you going to say?
Yeah.
I know they may have to rebuild, and again, I'm not, even as an analyst, I'm not the one that sits behind the board and looks at their drafting going forward. But I think there are probably a myriad of other ways they could have done this without ripping the heart and soul out of that team. Because my opinion, and I'm probably talking a little bit more as a fan here, is seeing Marchand in a Panthers jersey.
Well, he is kind of a rat, if you know what I mean.
But let me ask you something. Would you're a Devils fan, as am I. Tell me you would not take him on your team in a heartbeat.
Oh, I would in a heartbeat.
Okay.
It's just
And maybe they had to rebuild. Maybe they had to get started. I mean, he made some other moves, but boy, I mean, the fan base in Boston is not happy.
and the fan base in down in South Beach. Tell you, they've got a nasty team right now. The Florida Panthers, absolutely
They do.
nasty. I mean, they're going to beat you up in so many different ways. It's a nasty team right now. However, there has been a suspension.
Yeah, Aaron Ekblad, their top defenseman, suspended 20 games for violating the NHL's substance policy. He's in the program now. He's come out. He said that he accidentally took something without checking with the team. I mean, if you look at his history, he hasn't ever had a history of doing stuff like this, so you got to take that at face value. But that is a significant loss to the Panthers. But as you said, Sam, they're still pretty potent.
Yeah. Yeah, they're still potent. You know what? I believe him. He doesn't have any kind of history. I mean, mistakes happen. The fact is he's owning up to it. He's not appealing. He's just going to go through the process. And, it's one of those things where, you know what, you make a mistake, you live up to it, and and then you take the punishment, and that's what he's doing right here.
I mean, he'll be back for the opening round of the playoffs. It was a 20-game suspension. They've got 18 games left, so he's going to miss the rest of the regular season, and he'll be back for Game 3 of the first round. And who knows? Maybe this will help him get a little rest, not be banged up come playoff time, because he leads the Panthers in defensemen, especially in time on ice and skating. I mean, it's not going to hurt to have him rested going to the playoffs. It might actually help them.
Yeah. Sometimes it just works out that way. If you remember Scott Niedermayer, he had a 10-game suspension with that hit stick on the helmet to Peter Worrell, former Florida Panther, and but when he comes back, he's going to be right in the thick of things. So you're going like 0 to 100 in like 2 seconds.
And he's going to be arrested.
Yeah. Yeah. But hopefully he'll still be in game condition by the playoffs,
I think he probably will be. I mean, if it's an honest mistake, and like you, I believe him. There's nothing in his past to suggest that this was just anything other than a mistake. I mean, they know they're going to be tested. It's not, you'd have to be an idiot to do something on purpose and think you're going to get away with it.
Yeah. Agreed. So you think the Boston Bruins were the biggest losers on the trade deadline?
I actually, if I had to pick the biggest loser, I think it's probably the Carolina Hurricanes. I think the Rantanen thing was a debacle. I think that it doesn't make them look good. They got a couple of draft picks for it, but I mean, I don't know if they were going all in, but they lost arguably one of the best players in the league. Another team that I thought didn't really do anything at the trade deadline was the Detroit Red Wings. Steve Yzerman didn't do much. And I know you and I are probably going to disagree on this one, but I also think one of the big losers in at the trade deadline was the Devils. Tom Fitzgerald knew that he was going to have to make an impact trade, and he didn't. Maybe the deal wasn't there, but they are arguably not as good of a team as they were with Jack in there. And, we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. Some other players are going to have to step up, but they certainly didn't add anybody big. And, some of the, you and I are on the same boards and everything. A lot of the Devils fan base isn't happy about this. But again, maybe they weren't there. Who knows?
Well, he did say that they were in second place, whatever that means. But at the very least, he did drive up the price for another team, which I'm okay with. However, I'm always been the one to say sometimes. And I'm not sure if it's in this case, but sometimes it's better not to do anything. I mean, Cody Glass is a decent player. They didn't really give up that much for him. I mean, Chase Stillman, prospect. What could have he been? Anyone's guess. Probably nothing. draft picks and whatnot. I think Cody Glass is a decent player. I think he's going to help that third line. Dumoulin from the Ducks. Again, your added depth, 7th, 8th, 9th on the chart, veteran defenseman. You don't want to rely on hope and hoping that Seamus Casey and Simon Nemec are just going to step it up. Casey's back in the AHL. Nemec is going to be with the big club. I'd rather have him riding the pine at this point unless he starts paying attention and start listening to his coaches.
Yeah, I mean, when you take a look at what they had to do, we know that Jack Hughes was out for the season now, and the other teams did too, so the price, as you said, probably went up. It's just, I think that you have to take, and this will probably happen at the end of the season, and we touched on this a little bit last week, I think that this team has got to take a very hard look at some things. And if you want to start on the defensive side of the puck, Dougie Hamilton is hurt again. Okay?
Yeah.
He's making $9+ million a year. He's got to stay on the ice. I mean, he's been hurt a lot since he's been here, and it's not helping, with that type of salary. I mean, he needs to be on the ice. Siegenthaler is hurt again. He's out for the rest of the season. You've got, Jack is out for the season. At what point do you come up? I don't know. Maybe is it a plan B? I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, do you move Dougie Hamilton at some point? Do you trade him? I'm not saying I want to do that, but I mean, if you talk about some of the big names
a lot of
on
these
this
players have no movement clauses. So you got to be aware of that, but that can always change.
I mean, I'm not talking about necessarily trading him, but here's the thing. I mean, Dougie Hamilton's hurt a lot. Jack Hughes is hurt again. Even Nico's been hurt a lot. Siegenthaler has been hurt a lot. So at what point do you what do you do? Like going into the last 18 games of the season, I think the Devils are going to get into the playoffs, but if I'm being completely honest, it wouldn't surprise me if they don't, just because some of the teams behind them. I mean, Ottawa is surging. You've got a good Detroit Red Wings team. You got the Blue Jackets and everything. I mean, it's not a given by any means that they're going to lock that up.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you this, because of the expectations that we had with this team this year. I mean, if they don't get in, and I think they're going to get in, but if they don't get in, do you just chalk it up to injuries again?
Well, Fitzgerald's got that excuse going, or at least, if his job is on the line and he's on the hot seat, at least he has that excuse right now. Again, he spent all the way to the cap last couple of years. This should be a playoff team. If the Devils don't make the playoffs, I would put Fitzgerald's job on the hot seat for all of the next season, because the way him and Kim Madigan have been drafting those first-round picks, there's only one that they got it right, and it's the obvious one, Luke Hughes. But you look at Alexander Holtz, Dawson Mercer, and Shakir Mohammadulin. Mercer worked out, but he's kind of plateaued. You look at Chase Stillman, wasn't worth anything, really, other than get Cody Glass back, so everything's masked in trades. And you look at Simon Nemec, second overall, he might be a bust. He's got tremendous upside, but I just don't think the attitude and maturity is there.
Well, and some of the comments that have been out there, and whether you believe it or not, he feels that he should be in the NHL all the time and not going back and forth. There's a learning period. Defensemen take a little bit longer than the forwards to mature. But again, another topic that we've mentioned like ad nauseum on the show, Sam, perhaps at some point the New Jersey organization should bring somebody in to mentor those younger defensemen, a.k.a. Scott Stevens, or someone with that ability to help them get over the hump.
Do you think that Do you think they even reached out? Do you think Scott Stevens would want the job?
Well, the way I look at this, Sam, and again, we don't know what went on behind closed doors, but, the way things ended up with Marty, which was pretty, not warm and fuzzy at the time. I just think if they patch that up, they could probably patch this up, but who knows? I mean, I'd love to find out if they even approached him. I mean, maybe he wouldn't want the gig, but you've got, I think he's in the top 3 greatest defensemen of all time. And if you have someone that in your cupboard that can, mentor these defensemen, I mean, is Seamus Casey going to get hurt by having Scott Stevens mentor him? I don't think so.
At the same time, if you look from Scott Stevens' standpoint, what does he have to gain out of it? He's in retirement right now.
Yeah, I mean, does he want to be back behind the bench? I mean, they really, if we're being completely honest, they really didn't do right by him the first time. When they got, they kind of dismissed him and Adam Oates, who were doing a great job. I don't think they got, he got a fair shake, and I think it probably pissed him off.
Well, it pissed both Stevens and Bruder off. When, the new ownership group came in, and then Lou Lamoriello, I think once Lou Lamoriello left, they left, essentially.
Well, I mean, I've always thought that you need money guys and you need hockey guys, and at times you need to leave them alone. And you've got that resource. You've got this guy out there, one of the greatest players ever, and you're not using him. I mean, Nemec and Casey are supposed to be the future of this team. And if you've got somebody out there that can mentor them and you don't reach out to him, and again, maybe you and I can look into this, and you can too. Maybe find out if they have asked him, and if he said no, then he says no.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, he's there, but at the same time, I don't think. Again, I don't think Nemec is going anywhere. I think his trade value may have dropped quite a bit at this point. Second overall, Bruce. That's a tough pill to swallow if he's a bust.
Yeah. I mean, it's happened. I mean, look at Nolan Patrick. He his career ended because of, different situation, but still, there were times that there were a lot of people that wanted the Devils to take Nolan Patrick. Yeah. And, thank goodness they didn't.
Joseph Lenham says Stevens is in New Jersey, and he was getting excited about the future after the Rangers defeat in an interview. Again, I don't know. I mean, they have Sergei Brelin. They have Marty Brodeur as an executive. But Scott Stevens, who knows? I like to find out if they even try.
Well, I would like to find out too. And here's another thing. You think Marty? Let me ask you this: you think Marty is the next GM of this team?
I would say no, because that's a risk I don't think ownership would want to take, unless Marty wants the job so badly.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some things that they've got to look into. They really do. And you mentioned Fitzgerald and his job being on the hot seat. I'll put him on the hot seat for not adding anybody at the deadline. But on the other hand, I mean, he really can't do anything about these players constantly getting hurt. Another thing that the Devils didn't add at the trade deadline, which I would have liked to see. I mean, Curtis McDermott has done a decent job when he's played, but they need someone like a Marchand or a Pat Maroon or somebody to just keep people honest out there. We haven't had that in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, are we going to wait till someone runs over Nico again?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're relying on Pesci and Dillon and Kovacevic to get feisty. I don't know, but again, the first third of the season they were leading the league and fighting, and then suddenly it just dropped off after that Marty Necas Oscar performance. So I don't know, Bruce. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to be said. It's going to be interesting that we see how the Devils do in these last 18 games or 17 games of the season. They beat the Flyers the other night, but you and I were texting back and forth. They didn't look too great in the 2 games before that, and we'll see what team shows up, because there's teams behind them. And as much as I certainly want my team to make it in, I mean, how awesome would it be if the Columbus Blue Jackets get into the playoffs and do something?
Yeah, as long as it's not at the Devil's expense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of which, you wrote in the notes here, there's a new development in the Gaudreau case.
Yeah, there was something that came out, I guess, earlier this week, that the defendant was filing some type of motion saying that and again, this is from multiple reports, so they were saying that what was not revealed was that the Gaudreau brothers were also intoxicated when this accident happened. And so apparently that is going to be part of his defense, that they didn't know about this. And so I guess what he is implying, and again, this is my take on it, I'm not a lawyer, I guess what he's saying, that they perhaps share some responsibility for being where they shouldn't have been. I mean,
I think it's really, this is how the legal system works. The burden of proof is on the prosecutor, and they're trying to cast any kind of doubt here. I think that's all in his legal defense. That's what he's trying to do. I don't think he's implying anything. It's just one of those things, with evidence, so to speak. But I think it's more of not trying to get the full punishment that
yeah, and thank you for correcting me. You're right. I mean, it is part of his defense. Thank you. I should have stated it that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, boy, that's certainly not going to be received well if that's part of your defense. But I mean, if we're being honest, I mean, that's what lawyers do, right? That's what they do.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, he's entitled to a defense. That's within his right. He's putting it, his defense team is putting that out there. And, again, you're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And, again, that's the process. I mean, to me, he's done. No matter what kind of defense he's going to put up, he'll make interesting points. But at the end of the day, you've got 2 dead people, and you just don't get away with that. You just don't.
No, you don't. Yeah, you certainly don't get away with it. I'm just curious, because some people have suggested that if it wasn't 2 famous people, that this would have been a lot less severe. I'm not sure I agree with that, because you're talking about 2 dead people. But I mean, the situation, regardless how this turns out in court, like, this could not be worse for that poor family. Just couldn't.
Yeah. And, on the flip side, and again, I'm not condoning anything, but, the defendant has a family of his own, and they're going through hell right now with no fault to their own. It's a really tragic situation, right now. So, but, and as more evidence comes out, we might know what really happened. So, but we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, good. That's a good way to stop it, because that's just what's coming out. That's what's being reported, and we'll see what happens. But I don't know about you, but every time I see Johnny Gaudreau's wife and kids, it's like my heart hurts.
Oh, I know. I almost want to invite them to my house. It's weird. It's weird, and the fact that they're from Jersey makes it hits home, right? So
it certainly does.
Yeah. All right, Bruce. Well, we're going to get out of here. We're going to have Game Day Live at 6 p.m. Eastern. Vinny Parisi and I will pregame the Devils, Blue Jackets. The BJs are in town. I wish I was at American Whiskey. If you're at American Whiskey right now, try the new And Crew Brew. And Crew Brew, where we make winning memories together, one crew at a time, at American Whiskey. Well, let's get out of here. Hitting the button. Couldn't find the button, Bruce. Now I can't find the slider. I'm a little disorganized right now. Sorry about that. And I'm also reading Mike Rossi's comment. Whatever the guy's name, this isn't his first offense. Yeah. So, again, let it play out. I'm sure justice will be served. All right. Joseph Lanham says, fail that I should be at American Whiskey. I know. But as Bruce knows, we all have day jobs here. Sometimes we just, can't be at two places at once. But, yes, Anchor Brew is back. Art Heaton, yeah, it was kind of hidden somewhere in American Whiskey, but we put it back on tap. It's a great beer. It's definitely a great beer. A light lager for a New Jersey Devil fan. All right. Dropping the podcast in about an hour. Till next time, let's go Devils.